Morning everyone, it is 11 o'clock. Welcome to Cabinet. As usual, broadcast live via the website and archived so you can view it afterwards. Meeting is being held in person, but we are limiting the number of people here in the committee room in order to enable us to all keep a sensible distance apart. Microphones on when speak, microphones off when finished. Apologies, we've got Blake Payne who has COVID. No others, no, everybody's here. Minutes 3 to 10. I move the minutes held on the 14th of December 2021 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Deborah?
I'll second that.
All agreed? Thank you very much. Urgent items, none. Declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. I'm assuming that all members who are members of district councils or borough councils will wish to declare a registrable interest in item 4, the MTFS 2023 to 25-26. Is there anything else anybody wants to declare? Ozzy?
Item 5, Chair, regarding the Hinckley and Bosworth local plan.
Very good, Ozzy. Moving on, MTFS 2023 to 25-26, pages 11 to 270. It is what it is. The item's been considered by the overview and scrutiny bodies in January, all of them, and their comments are attached at Appendix Q. We're asked to approve the NTFS for submission to full council on the 23rd. We've got Chris Tambini here with us who will present the report. Then I'll go straight to you, Lee, as Cabinet Member for Resources. So, Chris, how come you're here without Declan?
He's had the morning off, so he's allowed to have a little bit of a break at home. So if I kind of kick off, so you considered the draft budget in December, and since then we have received the final settlement, and the table in paragraph 32 shows the impact of that final settlement. And it's probably fair to say that it is a better settlement than we had predicted, and a better settlement than we'd probably received in previous years. However, we did need it. When the Cabinet did receive the draft budget in December, it was balanced next year, but it did show a deficit rising to 46 million in year 4. This has now improved, so the deficit is now, after year 4, is 39 million, and there's a far more manageable gap of 8 million in 23-24. Clearly, we do need some more savings to bridge that gap, but at that size gap, it does feel a lot more achievable, and I think we will find those savings and be able to address it. Albeit that will require a fair amount of hard work by officers, and I think some very difficult decisions. As Cabinet knows, over the last 5 years, we've faced some really significant budget pressures, and these do remain. So the demand for children's and adult social care continues to increase. We've got a large deficit on special education needs, £63 million after year 4. And we've got huge demands on the capital programme driven by population growth. And this year you can add inflation to that list of pressures. If I would just run through a few kind of figures just to demonstrate the pressures we're under. So these are 4-year MTFS figures. So it includes growth of £88 million over the 4 years, primarily for social care, and £26 million of that growth is for adults next year alone. We've got inflation contingency of £72 million for pay and prices, and a significant element of that is to meet the requirement of the national living wage. And the capital programme is now 515 million, so over £500 million over the 4-year period. It largely to do with those pressures, the saving requirement has now increased to 94 million over those 4 years. The report does detail a number of risks. I mentioned inflation. There's one that and there's clearly risks around coronavirus as well. There's one I'd like to single out, and that's around the adult social care reforms, where there is some concern kind of generated nationally that the amount of money that's been put aside by government for those reforms could be insufficient. So it's something we need to watch over the coming year. Having said all that, I think the financial plan is prudent and it is deliverable, and we have improved some appropriate contingencies to manage those risks. The recommendations are on the order paper.
Some very big numbers there, Chris. Over you, Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks to Chris and Declan and the whole of the Corporate Resources team for the work that they've once again done to go into producing the MTFS that's here today as presented. As the Director says, this is a challenging financial period we are in. It will be hard work to deliver this MTFS, and I know that all of my Cabinet colleagues will be working very closely with their officers to make sure that we close the budget gap and deliver the required savings. The savings requirement would have been far larger if we had not included the 3% council tax increase. The level of savings required are not what any of us want to see, but it does allow for the maximum level of resources to be directed at those services that our residents value and also rely on. This is confirmed by those who responded to the MTFS consultation, which showed a good level of support for our proposals, including the 3% council tax increase. It is recognised that many residents will be having a hard time with the cost of living increases at the moment, and we will need to repay them by continuing to deliver services efficiently and effectively. I would also like to add that it is not all doom and gloom. We have managed to find extra funding for the most vulnerable, and over the next 4 years we expect to allocate growth of over £60 million towards our adult and children's social care provision. I would also quickly like to highlight some of the smaller but very important growth items that are included in this MTFS. We have managed to include an additional funding for our very popular and successful Shire Grant Scheme, which is an extra £150,000 per year. This is a much valued scheme that delivers for many of our Leicestershire communities. Also, we have put some funding aside for a tree nursery, which will help underpin our manifesto commitment to plant 700,000 trees in the county. We are well on the way. Finally, we continue to work with our MPs, who are all fully supportive and aware of the need to press for a fair funding system that is up to date and fit for purpose to allow us to deliver all of our statutory duties that we are responsible for. I finish by saying that this is a positive budget for Leicestershire residents. So I am happy as lead member for resources to propose the recommendation that a revenue budget for 22-23 be set totalling 471.7 million, and propose the recommendations A to Q listed under section 2 in the order paper be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Richard?
Thank you, Chairman. I second the motion. I agree it's a positive and prudent budget, and it isn't all doom and gloom. But for me, a key table, a key page is page 18 in our papers, showing the shortfall over the coming years. And I think it just summarises how used we have got to dealing with really difficult decisions and finances, that we are able to actually be pleased to welcome a shortfall in year 4 coming down to more than £39 million, and welcoming a second year with a shortfall still there, but one that's manageable. We used to have, of course, 2 years of balanced budget. So yes, there's good news there. It isn't all doom and gloom, but no mistaking challenges that we do still face. As I say, that table on page 18, for me, puts it very, very clearly and starkly. Second the motion, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. Peter Bedford?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, as an accountant, I very much recognise the difficulty in trying to budget and forecast when there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of variables in place, and particularly where there's the complexity of government policy changing from time to time. So I really do appreciate that. But I share the concerns around, particularly around the rising energy prices and inflation, which is set to rise to kind of unprecedented levels of recent years anyway, which is clearly going to have an effect on the council's budget. But it's also pleasing to read about the Corporate Asset Investment Fund's contribution to the budget process that now provides an income stream to at least offset some of those additional costs. I think that's a really positive thing that's coming from that scheme. And I'd just like to draw out on page 41, paragraph 134 of the report, the comment by the external auditors, Grant Thornton, who said that the County Council has a good track record of sound financial management. The council understands financial risks which it faces, and these are managed in maintaining an appropriate level of reserves and sound financial management. So I'd like to join Lee in thanking the officers, the finance team, for pulling together this budget under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you. Deborah?
Thank you, Leader. I just want to pick up on a few things about the children and family services. So over the next 4 years, we're projecting savings of 14.5 million. And this includes savings of 12.3 million from the Defining Children and Families Services for the Future, Fit for the Future programme. So this is work to aim to improve the outcomes for children and young families whilst delivering significant financial savings. We've also got growth of 25.1 million over the next 4 years, and this is mainly due to service pressures on our social care patients' budgets and the increased numbers of our looked after children. And this also provides us with funding for additional social workers to look after those social care workloads. On to schools. So the overall schools budget is a net nil budget for the local authority. However, in 2022-23, there's a funding gap of 9.1 million on the high needs block, and this will be carried forward as an overspend against the grant that we get from central government. But just importantly, adding to the previous 2 years of deficits, this deficit will be over 26 million by the end of this financial year and is projected to be over 62 million by the end of this MTFS 25-26. This is a position that the council cannot continue with, and central government needs to look at this funding very closely and very quickly. There are a number of reviews ongoing at the moment. We remain hopeful that reform comes quickly and not only reduces the financial burden for local authorities, but provides better outcomes for children.
Thank you, Deborah. Christine.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I can just say that my department, the adults, are looking closely at the expenditure and have brought quite a lot of it down. But we are concerned about the future growth in adult care. So we are aware that we've really got to get on top of that side of the business. Thank you.
Thank you. We've no other speakers, so I'll just sum up things. A couple of three things that I'm particularly pleased with. They're not massive money, but they do show our commitment. So I'm particularly pleased that we've managed to find an extra 150,000 for the Shire grants. Pam does a great job there, and she knows that they're exceedingly popular in the county, so I'm very happy we've got that. I'm also particularly pleased that with the 100,000 in for the tree nursery. Now, it won't be in my division, it'll be in Robert Ashman's division, hopefully in North West Leicestershire, near the National Forest, working with the National Forest. And I did speak to, I haven't told the chief yet this, I did speak to North West Chief Executive, and she is very, very keen to contribute to the new tree nursery. And if you write to her, she'll either find some revenue or some capital to help it develop. So it's exciting, that is. Another small amount in the great scheme of things, but equally popular with our villages, is the money we've set aside to enable all the street parties, etc., to take place in the county. Again, very small amount, really, 50-odd thousand, but really thankful from the parish council, some of whose precepts are in the hundreds, and they find the prospect of paying to shut a street for a street party daunting. So I think that'll be, again, exceedingly popular in the villages. And although, Lee, we are going for 3%, which, as you rightly point out, is a burden for people, people must also respect that it is a great burden for us here, and we do it with a heavy heart. But you have to remember that inflation now is between 6 and 7%, so we're only precepting for half of inflation. So we do it with a heavy heart, but you have to remember we're all suffering, including the county council, with inflation. And then finally, one which I noticed was on Facebook and social media yesterday, is we are providing £3.5 million for free school meals, which again is welcomed by a lot of the people who are struggling to feed their children. So I'm very happy about that. And of course, we're putting money into the Midlands Energy Hub, which again should help people in the longer term with increase in fuel costs, which again we're all suffering from, irrespective whether you're rich or poor. We all notice our bills are substantially bigger. So with those few comments, it was moved by Lee, seconded by Richard. Can I have a show of hands in favour? And of course it goes to full council. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on then now to the next agenda item, which is the Hinckley and Bosworth's new local plan response to the Regulation 19 consultation. This seeks approval for the Chief to write to the Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council with our formal response to their local plan. Simon Lawrence, Head of Growth, will introduce it and then I'll speak to it. Simon.
Good morning. Thank you, Leader. Just a quick introduction, if that's okay. As you've just stated, the purpose of this report is to seek the Cabinet's authority for the Chief Executive to submit the County Council's formal response to the Hinckley and Bosworth local plan consultation. This will ensure that the County Council's response is submitted within the statutory framework of the Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council's consultation. It should be noted that the consultation has been delayed from Hinckley and Bosworth as a result of staffing issues there, and that it will now run between the 9th of February and the 23rd of March, and not the 2nd of February and the 16th of March, as stated in the Cabinet report in front of you. However, as this delayed consultation period still closes ahead of the next meeting of the Cabinet, the recommendation, as set out in the order paper remains unchanged. Thank you, Leader.
I'll formally move the recommendation and go to Ozzy.
Thank you, Leader. I second the recommendation. As a member of that authority, I raised my concerns at the recent Hinkley and Bosworth meeting regarding the infrastructure, and I raised the concerns of both the county and myself regarding schools and the road network and highways. But they moved on to Regulation 19, and I still have those concerns, and I'm happy to support the motion.
Peter Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. As another member from Hinkley and Bosworth area, clearly it's in all of our interests, particularly my division in Markfield, Desford, Thornton, and all the residents of the borough, that we have a robust plan in place. And it just concerned me on paragraph 4 that it brings that risk out that if this plan isn't robust, then it may well be rejected, and that's in no one's interest. So just to reiterate how important it is that we get this plan in place and it's the right plan for the borough. Thank you.
Indeed, I mean, the importance of local plans, especially in Hinkley Bosworth, is absolutely paramount. There's all manner of random applications having to be permitted around there. And as I've said, none of us are particularly against development, but we are against boxes on spine roads. We need infrastructure with development, and an up-to-date, well-written local plan is absolutely crucial to getting the services that people that move into new houses require. It's not just roads. They do want access to schools. They do want access to doctors. They'd like access to the odd local shop. It's communities we want building, not boxes on spine roads. But having said that, I moved it. Ozzy seconded it. We have no other speakers. Can we have a show of hands in favour of the motion? Thank you very much. Agenda item 6 is becoming an anti-racist organisation, something we've always been particularly proud of. The employment considered reports on the matter at its meeting on the 3rd of February, and its comments are attached to the order paper marked 6. Jane Moore, Director of Children and Family Services and the Council's Executive Lead for Race Issues will present the report. I think Jane's online, and then I'm going to go straight to Pam. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So the purpose of the report as set out is to propose that Leicestershire County Council makes a clear commitment to becoming an anti-racist organisation. So by way of background, the council is rightly proud of its record on race relations and has established a strong structure for supporting equalities issues, including our department equality groups, our staff networks, our management training, and a lead member for community staff relations and equality. And the majority of staff agree that the organisation is an employer that's committed to equality and diversity. Nevertheless, an external review of the barriers to progression for Black, Asian and multi-ethnic staff in 2020 identified a number of concerns in relation to the leadership culture and race equality and whether staff development was targeted enough. And there were also concerns as to how some issues relating to racism were being addressed or were not being addressed. And recent data on the council staff profile does show that whilst it has relatively high levels of employment of people from Black, Asian and multi-ethnic backgrounds, at between 17 to 30% of roles up to middle management, this does reduce to less than 10% at senior management levels. And we've included some further data around interview success and also staff experiencing discrimination. So in the summer of 2021, the council became a signatory of the Race at Work Charter, and this committed us to 7 calls of action. One was around appointing an executive lead for race, capturing ethnicity data and to publicise our progress, to a commitment at board level to zero tolerance of harassment and bullying, making clear that we support equality in the workplace and it is the responsibility of all leaders and managers, that we take action that supports ethnic minority career progression, support race inclusion allies and include Black, Asian and mixed race and other ethnically diverse-led enterprise in our supply chains. So we have appointed an executive lead, which is myself, and we established an officer task group to develop an action plan. The group very early on formed a view that a strong commitment to anti-racism was required in addition to the actions of addressing the issues around progression and our commitments of the Race at Work Charter. And in making this commitment, we're not stating that it is or has been the organisation has or is racist. Rather, we're making a commitment to be proactive in addressing any perceived or actual inequalities, and also to foster a culture which is open and transparent and celebrates the contribution of people of colour to its workforce and the wider community of Leicestershire and beyond. So a key element of the anti-racist approach is to follow a zero tolerance approach to harassment and bullying. This doesn't mean that anyone who expresses an opinion or acts in a manner that might be considered racist should be instantly refused a service or have their contract of employment terminated. Rather, it's about having such attitudes not being allowed to pass without challenge, and that there should be opportunities for reflection and learning as well. So the council does have an important statutory duty and a role to promote community cohesion and also foster good relationships between different groups. And a key element of this approach does involve the need to engage with communities across Leicestershire, as well as celebrating the contribution of all people to our economic, social and cultural life of Leicestershire. So we have an action plan. As stated, there is an officer group that has worked together to pull together an action plan to progress the work. There are three main themes in that action plan, one around leadership and management, one around workplace and culture, and the final one around community and partnerships. So I'll move to the recommendation as set out on the order paper and also note the comments of the Employment Committee as well. Thank you.
Very good, Jane. Pam?
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to re-emphasise what Jane has said about we're not an anti-racist organisation, and what we're doing is we're just stating what a good employer we are, that we look after all our employees, not just a select few. Anti-racism goes beyond the compliance with the legal requirements and commits the council to positively and proactively address issues of perceived racism or discrimination before they escalate. I signed the Race at Work Charter in August that has got 7 calls to action to do that, and from out of this has come along this policy about stating we're not an anti-racist council. So I have no hesitation in proposing that we accept this new strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And to re-emphasise the seriousness that the administration takes this issue, I will formally second it. Thanks for your work you do, Pam. Anybody else? Okay, all in favour, please show. Thank you very much. 7, Leicestershire Rural Framework seeks the Cabinet's approval for a revised Leicestershire Rural Framework. We've got Tom online. He's Assistant Chief. He'll present the report. Then it's back to you, Pam. Tom, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The report seeks the Cabinet's approval of a revised Leicestershire Rural Framework covering the period to 2030. The framework, which is appended to the report, forms the basis for the work of the Leicestershire Rural Partnership, the LRP, which, led by the County Council, brings together public, private and voluntary stakeholders to improve services and to support rural communities and businesses in rural areas. The framework's been developed to be consistent with the Council's emerging revised strategic plan and the community's approach, both of which are currently up for consultation, and also with the LEP's economic growth strategy. A rural evidence base commissioned by the LRP has informed all of those 3 documents. The framework includes a vision, which is set out at paragraph 16 of the report, and 3 principles set out at paragraph 22. In essence, those principles refer to understanding the needs of rural communities and businesses in the county, shaping policies nationally and locally which will affect rural communities, and supporting and facilitating action to improve the rural economy and secure funding. 7 priorities are set out at paragraph 23. These are grouped in relation to 3 of the priority outcomes in the Council's emerging strategic plan. And I think it's probably just worth me pointing out that the main differences between these priorities and those included in the previous rural framework reflect the increasing importance being placed on the environment, on net zero carbon and climate change as a priority, and also an even more enhanced focus on the rural economy. An action plan will be developed to support implementation of the framework, and progress in delivering those actions will be monitored. Cabinet is recommended to approve the framework.
Thank you, Tom. Pam, this is one of yours.
Thank you. Part of the LRP, what we do, we look at any new funding sources which come forward or changes in government policy. The document will be reviewed to ensure that the rural priorities are kept up to date. We don't have a budget as such, but the action plan that has been produced is a summary of what partners are currently delivering that hit LRP priorities. The main differences between this framework and the previous one is the increasing importance of the environment and climate change in the priorities, and the increasing focus on the economy. The LRP will keep a watching brief on any community priorities that may affect rural areas. And I'd just like to finish by saying that the LRP is a mechanism which engages with partners such as the NFU, the National Forest and the Country Landowners Association, who do not traditionally engage with the County Council, and we have some of their representatives on our committee. So I have no hesitation in proposing this article. Thank you.
Yep, you do some good work there, Pam. Louise.
Thank you. I'm happy to second this. We have a very strong rural partnership at the county here. We do need to encourage and ensure rural inclusion, and I'm very happy to see the focus on rural economy and climate change going forward. Happy to second.
Well, we are a very rural county. I mean, we've got some big towns, but we are in areas very deeply rural, so it's very important. I have no other speakers. It was moved by Pam, seconded by Louise. All in favour? Thank you. 8, development of a family hubs model in Leicestershire, 303 to 310. Item 8 concerns the proposed implementation of a family hubs model, which is a system-wide approach to provide a joined-up service for children and young adults. So we've got Jane back, and then Deborah's the lead on this. So I'll let you go first, Jane, then Deborah.
Thank you. So this report is seeking Cabinet approval to develop a family hub model of service delivery. A family hubs model is a system-wide model of providing high-quality, whole-family, joined-up family support services, and they deliver support services from pregnancy right through to until they reach adulthood or the age of 19. The concept of family hubs isn't new, but in the last 12 months, it's been increasingly prominent in government thinking and policy and funding as well. So a model framework has been developed by the Department of Education and the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and it has 3 key areas: one around improving access to services, secondly, developing connections between agencies, communities, voluntary sector and other partners, and the third one around supporting relationships within families and communities and building resilience and reducing unresolved conflict in families. So the proposal is to implement the family hubs model in Leicestershire for the delivery of our early help services to families through our children and family wellbeing service. So this means really improving universal access to services by making best use of our existing buildings to deliver services to families in their communities, engaging with families and communities in the development, delivery and evaluation of services, and ensuring that all partners have a clear pathway to services and that we work with partners to improve data sharing. So all of the above can be achieved within the existing resources, and subject to Cabinet's approval, the new service model can be progressed regardless of whether we're successful with the bid that we put into the DFE before Christmas for the just under £1 million for transformational funding. We do require Cabinet approval to progress with the family hubs models of service delivery. This is a requirement as set out by the DFE, and we will undertake a feasibility study which will include mapping of existing services and resources which could become part of that family hubs delivery model. We have worked and had some informal discussions with our early help partners, and the majority of them have already indicated a positive response in progressing with this way of working. The timescale for the full implementation of the model is anticipated to be around 2 years, hopefully completed by March 2024. The Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee did consider a presentation on these proposals at its meeting last month, and you'll note in paragraphs 26 and 27 the feedback from that committee. So I'll move to the recommendations as set out on the order paper. Thank you.
Pity the DFE haven't replied to our grant application as yet, but Deborah.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendations on the order paper. I'm really pleased this has come forward. It's something that we've long time wanted to do, but obviously we needed some support from the DFE and the government. So as you've heard, it's a family hubs model that's a system-wide approach to providing high quality joined up family support services. And just to reiterate, it's not about buildings, it's about building services and support for families county-wide. So the model framework developed by the DFE is all about improving services, developing those wider connections and supporting families and their communities. So we've received the £40,000 array to design the family hub model. We're working really closely with our partners and health colleagues to ensure we produce a family hub model that is sustainable for many years to come. And obviously by implementing this model, that gives us the opportunity to bid for the elements that we've just heard about of the £1 million we've just put in for, and we're just waiting for the response for that. Hopefully we'll hear about that in the next few weeks. So I'm really pleased to bring this forward. It's going to be really good for our children and our families, and just help us to support all those families from birth right through to early adulthood. So very happy to move these recommendations.
Very good. Christine.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to second this report. The proposed family hubs model will be able to support the child from early years into early adulthood by supporting their families. It is well known that if you support the child from birth to age 5, it gives them the best start in life. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other speakers. Moved by Deborah, seconded by Christine. All in favour? Thank you. Leicestershire's policy on admission to mainstream schools, determination of admission arrangements. Jane, you're going to do it, then I'm going back to Deborah.
Thank you, Leader. So this report is seeking Cabinet approval of a revised Leicestershire Schools admission policy for admissions from September 2023, and also 3 associated coordination arrangements for first-time admissions, secondary transfers and mid-term transfers. And it also sets out the mandatory changes that have been made to the policy as a result of the new National Schools Admissions Code. So just by way of background, the school admission policy sets out the council's admission arrangements for the purposes of allocating school places at community and voluntary controlled schools within Leicestershire, for which we are the admissions authority. The new statutory code was issued in July 2021 and it came into force from September last year. And the changes as a result of the new statutory guidance are now reflected in the revised policy. The required changes focus specifically on clarifying and improving the school admissions process, specifically for those seeking to move outside the normal rounds, otherwise known as mid-year transfers. And we've summarised the main changes to the policy in paragraph 12. And also due to the revised policy having only been amended to reflect the mandatory changes to comply with the National School Admissions Code, there's no requirement to consult on its contents. So I move to the recommendations as set out on the order paper.
Very good. Deborah?
Thank you. And there's not a lot more I can add. It's something that we have to do, and we're just making sure that there's really clear admissions policies for parents and carers to understand about how they need to put in for their children to get a cool school place. So nothing further to add, Leader.
You formally moved it.
Yeah, I will move the recommendations.
Christine? All in favour? Thank you. 11 items referred from over scrutiny, none. Sorry, that was 10. 11 items which are urgent, none. Exclusion of the press and public. I now move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded for the following item of the business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 10 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I move. Deborah?
I'll second.
All in favour? Thank you. Now we have to wait a minute till the